So currently we have one H1 element on our website. But of course, in reality, you might already imagine that this will not suffice. We have more types of content. We don't just have titles. We might also have images and subtitles and regular text and buttons and so on. So one element alone is probably not getting us anywhere. So therefore, which HTML elements exist? Well, there are many available HTML elements because there are a lot of things you can describe, a lot of different kinds of content. We might immediately think about content like titles, subtitles, regular text, images, buttons, maybe also input fields. But if we dig a bit deeper, we can get more detailed than that. For example, we might be building a site like this, where we have a blog post in the end, and there we have like a date, and we have an author, and of course we could just describe that as plain text, but to us humans it's more than text. It's a date, and it's the name of a person. So we might even want to describe this kind of content to the browser. So if we think about content like this, then it makes sense that we might have quite a lot of HTML elements we can use. And indeed we do. There is a web page out there, the MDN Web Docs, which is kind of like the official documentation for HTML and more, you could say. And there you find a page with an HTML elements reference. On this page, you find all available HTML elements, and that is a long list if you scroll through it. But don't worry, you don't need to learn those by heart. You should absolutely not dive into this list and try to fully understand and learn it right now. Instead, throughout this course, we're going to introduce all those important HTML elements you're working with all the time, and we're also going to dive into some lesser used elements, of course, and then you can always use resources like this MDN page as a backup once you are a web developer to find the right element for some niche case you might be facing. It's also worth pointing out already that the browser is quite forgiving and there is more than one way of annotating content. You can annotate something as just regular text or be more specific and make it clear that this is actually an address, for example. So you won't break your web page if you go for a wrong HTML element, and there also won't be always a clear right element either. Sometimes you have multiple options and you can go with the one which you personally think best describes the content you have. But again, that's already a bit too advanced here. That is something which we'll learn throughout the course, and that is something which you'll get a better feeling for throughout this course. But of course, now at this point, you might be asking yourself, why do we have those different HTML elements? Why do we need them? And the answer here, as mentioned before already, is that for a lot of content, if you don't add any extra annotation, that content doesn't really have a clear meaning. If you think about text, for example, there is a difference between having a title and regular text. But without some kind of annotation and/or styling, there's no way for us to tell those different meanings apart. It is all just plain text then. It's basically like in the Word document, where you also don't just write plain unformatted text. Instead, you make text bold, you turn something into a title to convey extra meaning. That's why we use HTML elements, because with that we can annotate and describe our content, and we can tell the browser that something should be a title, a subtitle, an image, or anything else. And that in turn then allows the browser to display this content correctly. And here it's important to understand that in the case of a web page, there are different kinds of parties that will view the page. Of course, that's us as a regular visitor of the page, and we also need to know whether something is a title or not. Otherwise, it will be hard for us to get something out of that web page. But it's not just us. It's, for example, also search engine crawlers. So the tools search engines use to look at all the websites in the World Wide Web and to then find out what that website is about so that they can present that website if users search for something. If you search for something in Google, then Google shows results, and these results are the websites it's crawled, which it then thinks best fit your search query. And it's able to find out whether a website fits your search query because Google looks into that website. And since, of course, that search engine crawler is not a human, but some program written by developers, that search engine crawler needs extra hints like the HTML annotations to find out what your page is about. So here we're not talking about a human, but about a computer looking at our website. And that hopefully also helps with understanding why extra annotations are needed. And last but definitely not least, it's also important to keep in mind that not all human visitors of our website will be able to just look at our content. If a visitor is blind, for example, then he or she will not be able to see the content. Instead, that visitor typically will rely on assistive technologies like screen readers to have that website content read out to him or her. And that means that we need to describe our content so that such assistive technology is able to read and present our content correctly. And because of all those different parties that are involved, we need to annotate and describe our content, and HTML is the language that allows us to do that with help of those HTML tags that turn content into meaningful HTML elements.